Sergeant Marcus Trent had been with the Austin Police Department for 9 years when he responded to a call that would obliterate his career and cost the city $14.2 million. He was 34 years old, experienced enough to understand constitutional rights, but apparently convinced that his assumptions about who owned property in upscale Austin neighborhoods were more reliable than documentation, credentials, or common sense. One Saturday afternoon in a renovated event space on South Congress Avenue, he received a complaint from a neighbor about suspicious activity, saw a black woman hanging streamers and balloons for a child's birthday party, and decided she couldn't possibly own the building she was standing in. What Trent did next, ignoring her ownership documents, dismissing her professional credentials, and arresting her in front of her terrified 9-year-old daughter while 40 party guests watched, would become irrefutable proof of how racial bias doesn't just destroy careers, it destroys families, trust, and any illusion that credentials protect black professionals from being criminalized in their own property. A black woman in her early 40s, Dr. Amara Williams, was standing on a ladder in the main hall of her event venue, securing a glittering Happy 9th Birthday Zoe banner to the exposed brick wall. Her keys to the building sat on the reception desk 10 feet away, next to the printed rental agreement with her business LLC listed as both lessor and lessee. No crime, no disturbance, no violation, just a mother transforming an empty hall into a magical space for her daughter's party starting in 2 hours. But Sergeant Trent saw her through a filter so distorted by assumptions about who could own commercial real estate in gentrified South Congress that he couldn't process a black woman as the legitimate owner of a 6,000 square foot venue worth $2.8 million. Before we get into what happened next, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The Magnolia Hall sits on South Congress Avenue between Annie Street and Monroe Street, 3 blocks south of Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. It's a renovated 1920s warehouse converted into event space in 2018, one of those buildings that survived gentrification by becoming part of it. Exposed brick walls restored to their original red 20-foot ceilings with original steel beams painted matte black, polished concrete floors, floor-to-ceiling windows along the south wall flooding the space with natural light. The kind of venue that hosts corporate retreats, art gallery openings, wedding receptions, and upscale private parties. Professional, expensive, sought after. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday in June. Austin's summer heat pressed against the windows, but inside the air conditioning kept the hall cool and comfortable. The main space was empty except for Dr. Williams, her daughter Zoe, and Williams's sister Maya, who was unloading party supplies from a van parked in the loading zone behind the building. Pink and gold balloons clustered in one corner. Folding tables leaned against the far wall, waiting to be set up for pizza, cake, and juice boxes. Streamers hung half-finished from the ceiling, the kind of peaceful, chaotic Saturday afternoon where nothing criminal was happening, just a family preparing to celebrate a child's birthday. Dr. Amara Williams had been an orthopedic surgeon at Dell Seton Medical Center for 14 years. 14 years repairing shattered bones, replacing damaged joints, and performing complex spinal surgeries that required both technical precision and steady nerves under pressure. She'd completed over 4,200 surgeries, trained 17 orthopedic residents who'd gone on to their own successful careers, and published research on minimally invasive spine surgery techniques that had been cited in medical journals across 3 continents. Her patients called her the surgeon who listened before she cut. Her colleagues called her the person you wanted in the operating room when everything went wrong. Williams had graduated from Howard University School of Medicine, then completed her orthopedic surgery residency at Johns Hopkins, where she'd been named chief resident in her final year. She'd completed a fellowship in spine surgery at the University of California, San Francisco, one of the most competitive programs in the country, accepting only 2 fellows per year. She'd received the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons Resident Leadership Award and had been invited to speak at national conferences on disparities in surgical outcomes for minority patients. At 42 years old, Amara Williams was exactly where she'd worked to be. Established, respected, and financially secure enough to pursue opportunities beyond medicine. She'd purchased the Magnolia Hall 7 years earlier in 2019 for $1.9 million, seeing potential in a neglected warehouse that others had dismissed. She'd invested another $9,000 in renovations, transforming it into one of Austin's premier event venues. She ran the business herself, handling bookings, contracts, and vendor relationships while maintaining her full-time surgery schedule. Her sister Maya managed day-to-day operations, and together they'd built a venue with a 6-month wait list for weekend bookings. She was a single mother to Zoe, her 9-year-old daughter, whose birthday party was scheduled to start at 5 p.m. that Saturday. Williams had performed emergency surgery that morning, finishing at noon, then driven home to shower and change before heading to the venue to set up. Zoe had helped her mother plan every detail: the pink and gold color scheme, the unicorn cake from Sweet Ritual Bakery, the playlist of pop songs, the guest list of 40 fourth graders from Zoe's school. Williams had cleared her surgical schedule for the weekend specifically to make this party perfect. That Saturday afternoon, Williams had arrived at Magnolia Hall at 1:30 p.m. She'd unlocked the front door with her keys, disarmed the security system with her code, and spent the next hour directing setup. She wore jeans, a yellow cotton blouse, and sneakers. Her hospital badge, which she'd forgotten to remove from her pocket, identified her as Dr. A. Williams, orthopedic surgery. Her driver's license, business cards, and the property deed showing Magnolia Events LLC as owner were in her purse on the reception desk. She looked like what she was, a professional woman setting up her daughter's birthday party in her own building. She'd done nothing illegal, nothing suspicious, nothing that warranted attention. She'd spoken to 3 delivery people who'd dropped off tables and chairs, waved to the barista across the street who recognized her, and texted 6 parents confirming party details. But to someone watching from across South Congress Avenue, Amara Williams's presence was a problem, and that person had decided to call the police. Marcus Trent was 34 years old. He'd been a patrol sergeant with the Austin Police Department for 9 years, rising through the ranks faster than most of his academy classmates, earning a reputation for being thorough, decisive, and uncompromising about procedure. He was assertive, confident in his judgment, and deeply concerned about property crime in Austin's rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods. His supervisors described him as results-oriented but occasionally inflexible in his interpretation of community concerns. In 9 years, Trent had compiled a record that should have raised immediate red flags at every level of supervision. 14 complaints. 14. 9 of them involved allegations of racial profiling, excessive questioning, or unlawful detention of Black and Latino residents in predominantly white neighborhoods. 4 had been sustained, resulting in written reprimands and mandatory bias training that Trent attended but clearly never internalized. The other 10 had been closed with insufficient evidence, though several included witness statements corroborating the complainant's accounts. Trent had a pattern. He responded aggressively to calls involving people of color in commercial or residential spaces where he assumed they didn't belong. A Black family hosting a barbecue in a rented pavilion at Zilker Park. Trent demanded to see their permit, questioned whether they had permission to be there, and threatened citations when they asked why he was singling them out. A Latino contractor unloading tools from his truck outside a home he was renovating. Trent detained him for 35 minutes, demanding proof of employment and running warrant checks despite the contractor showing him the work order and homeowner's phone number. An Asian couple photographing a historic building on East 6th Street. Trent questioned whether they were conducting surveillance and asked to see identification, even though they were tourists with cameras standing on a public sidewalk. The pattern was clear. The documentation was extensive. But Trent remained on patrol, his evaluations noting that he should work on community engagement and de-escalation skills without any meaningful consequences or reassignment. That Saturday afternoon at 2:43 p.m., Trent received a call from dispatch. Suspicious activity reported at 1840 South Congress Avenue, the Magnolia Hall. Caller states unknown individuals are inside the building setting up without permission, possible burglary or trespassing. In Trent's mind, the narrative immediately formed. Break-in at an upscale venue, suspects attempting to use the space without authorization, probably looking to steal equipment or host an illegal party. He didn't consider that the people inside might have legitimate access. He didn't think about alternative explanations. He just responded, Code 2, non-emergency, but immediate. Trent arrived at Magnolia Hall at 2:46 p.m., parking his cruiser in front of the building. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see a Black woman on a ladder hanging decorations. Her daughter, he assumed it was her daughter, sat nearby on the floor organizing party favors. Another woman, also Black, was carrying boxes through a side door. In Trent's mind, that didn't match legitimate use of an upscale event space. The owner would have hired professional decorators. The owner wouldn't be doing manual labor. The owner certainly wouldn't look like that. He walked directly toward the front entrance. Do you think officers should be required to verify ownership before making arrests for trespassing on private property? Drop your answer below. Dr. Williams was securing the last corner of the birthday banner when she heard the front door open. She looked down from the ladder and saw a police officer walking toward her, hand resting on his belt, eyes scanning the room with the kind of suspicion that made her stomach tighten. She climbed down carefully, aware that her 9-year-old daughter was watching. This is private property. You need to clear out. Williams blinked, confused. I'm decorating for my daughter's birthday party. We rented this space. Trent's jaw tightened. The owner called about unauthorized people setting up inside. You need to leave now. Williams felt the familiar weight of this moment, the recognition of what was happening. She kept her voice calm, controlled, aware that Zoe was listening. I am the owner. This is my venue. I've owned it for 7 years. Trent's expression didn't shift. The caller specifically said black people were trespassing. She didn't mention anything about ownership. Williams felt her sister Maya step beside her, equally calm but radiating protective fury. Then the caller is wrong, Williams said. I'm Dr. Amara Williams. I own this building. You can check the deed. It's public record. Travis County Property Records, parcel number 1504820019. Trent crossed his arms. Doctor, business owner, sure. Prove it. Williams pointed to the reception desk. My ID and the rental agreement are in my bag right there. The property deed is in my office upstairs. I can show you the security system code, the utility bills in my business name, my tax records. Don't reach for anything. Hands where I can see them. This is where assumptions become accusations. Sergeant Trent had responded to a call about black people trespassing in an upscale venue. When he arrived, he saw black people in an upscale venue. In his mind, that confirmed the complaint. Every piece of evidence after that, the ownership claim, the professional demeanor, the presence of a child, was filtered through his initial assumption. He wasn't looking at a business owner. He was looking at trespassers trying to avoid arrest. Williams raised her hand slowly, aware that Zoe had started crying. Officer, I'm not reaching for anything without permission, but you need to understand this is my property. I can prove it. Let me show you documentation. Trent stepped closer. Who called this in? What neighbor reported this? Williams felt a flash of rage but kept it controlled. I don't know who called, but whoever it was is wrong. I've owned this building since 2019. I run a business here. We have events booked every weekend. This isn't trespassing. This is a mother setting up her daughter's birthday party. Behind Trent, the front door opened. 3 more patrol officers entered, called as backup. Williams's sister Maya pulled out her phone and started recording. Ma'am, put the phone down, one of the backup officers said. No, Maya said, her voice steady. This is legal. I'm documenting this. My sister owns this building and you're treating her like a criminal in front of her child. Trent turned to Williams. Final warning. Produce identification and proof of ownership or you're leaving in handcuffs. Williams pointed again to her bag. My wallet is in my purse on that desk. My driver's license, my medical license, my business cards, everything you need to verify who I am. Let me walk over there and get it. Trent nodded. Slowly. Williams walked to the desk, Zoe following close behind her, still crying. She opened her purse, pulled out her wallet, and handed it to Trent. Her driver's license, Dr. Amara J. Williams, address matching the one on file for Magnolia Events, LLC. Her medical license, active, board-certified orthopedic surgeon. Her business card, Magnolia Hall event venue, owner and operator. Trent examined them with the kind of skepticism reserved for documents he'd already decided were fake. These could be fabricated, he said. Williams felt her composure fracture. Fabricated? You think I fabricated a medical license and a driver's license to trespass in my own building? I've seen fake IDs before. Then call Dell Seton Medical Center. I'm on staff. I performed surgery there this morning. My name is in the hospital directory. Or call my attorney. Or walk upstairs to my office and look at the property deed framed on the wall. Or check Travis County records. Or call the security company and verify that the alarm code I used is registered to my business. I can give you 6 ways to verify this in under 5 minutes. Trent turned to one of the backup officers. Run her name. The officer pulled out his radio. Dispatch, run a driver's license. Williams, Amara J., Texas, DL number. While they waited, Williams crouched down next to Zoe, who was sobbing now, terrified. Baby, it's okay. This is a misunderstanding. Mama owns this building. We're not doing anything wrong. The radio crackled. Driver's license valid. No warrants. No criminal history. Registered owner of 2022 Honda Pilot and 2019 Tesla Model Y. Property records show Magnolia Events LLC, registered agent Amara J. Williams, as owner of 1840 South Congress Avenue. The room went silent. One of the backup officers looked at Trent. Sarge, she's the owner. Trent's face hardened. That doesn't explain why we received a complaint. Williams stood, fury finally breaking through. You received a complaint because someone saw black people in a building and assumed we were criminals. That's racial profiling. That's bias. And you responded by treating me like a suspect instead of a property owner. You didn't ask for my documentation first. You didn't verify the complaint. You ordered me to leave my own building. Behind them, Maya was still recording. Every word. Every moment. Trent turned to leave. We're responding to a call. You can file a complaint if you have an issue with how this was handled. Williams stepped forward. I am filing a complaint. I'm also suing. You just terrorized my daughter in our own property based on nothing but a racist phone call. You didn't verify facts. You didn't exercise judgment. You escalated instead of de-escalated. And now my daughter is traumatized, my sister has video evidence, and you're walking away like this is acceptable. Trent stopped. You were belligerent and uncooperative. I was calm and provided documentation you refused to accept. This is retaliation for asserting my rights. Trent turned back toward her, jaw tight. Ma'am, you need to step back. Williams didn't move. Or what? You'll arrest me for standing in my own building, in front of my daughter, while witnesses record it? Please, do it. Let's see how that looks on camera. This is where authority becomes tyranny. Sergeant Trent had been challenged, corrected, and contradicted by a black woman who refused to be intimidated. In his mind, compliance wasn't enough. He needed submission. He needed acknowledgement of his authority. And when Williams wouldn't give him that, he decided to take it. Turn around, hands behind your back. Williams stared at him. You're arresting me? For obstruction and failure to comply with a lawful order? What lawful order? Williams's voice rose. You ordered me to leave my own property. That's not a lawful order. That's harassment. Trent grabbed her arm. Turn around, Zoe screamed. Mama! Maya moved forward, phone still recording. You're arresting her for what? For proving she owns this building? For refusing to leave her own property? Ma'am, step back or you're next, Trent snapped. Williams turned to her sister. Maya, call my attorney. Call Del Seaton and tell them I've been arrested. Call every parent on the party list and tell them what happened. Document everything. She looked down at Zoe, tears streaming down her daughter's face. Baby, Mama is okay. This officer is making a mistake, but I'm okay. Aunt Maya is here. I'll be home soon. Trent pulled her arms behind her back and cuffed her, tight enough to hurt. Williams didn't resist. She knew the script. Black person resists arrest, justifies violence. Black person complies, creates evidence of wrongful arrest. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice and criminal trespass. Criminal trespass? Williams's voice was ice. In the building I own? Trent marched her toward the door. The three backup officers stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Passers-by with phones raised. The barista from across the street. A couple who'd been walking their dog. Everyone was recording. This is Dr. Amara Williams, Maya called out, phone still raised. Owner of Magnolia Hall. Being arrested for decorating for her daughter's birthday party in her own building. Get every second. Should officers face automatic suspension when arresting property owners for trespassing without verifying ownership first? Comment your thoughts. The drive to the downtown precinct took 11 minutes. Williams spent it memorizing every detail. The time on the dashboard clock, the route Trent took, the fact that he didn't read her Miranda rights, the tightness of the cuffs cutting into her wrists. She'd testified in medical malpractice trials. She knew how to build documentation. They arrived at the precinct at 3:04 p.m. Trent walked her inside, still cuffed, past the front desk where Lieutenant Anna Reyes looked up with immediate alarm. Trent, what is this? Obstruction and criminal trespass at Magnolia Hall on South Congress. Reyes stood. Criminal trespass? Who's the complainant? Anonymous call. Suspect was inside the venue without authorization, refused to leave when ordered. Williams spoke, her voice controlled but carrying the authority of someone used to commanding operating rooms. Lieutenant, I am Dr. Amara Williams. I own Magnolia Hall. I've owned it for 7 years. I was setting up my daughter's 9th birthday party when Sergeant Trent responded to a false complaint. I showed him my driver's license, my medical license, my business cards, and property records confirming ownership. He arrested me anyway in front of my 9-year-old daughter for the crime of being black in my own building. Reyes's face went pale. You showed him ownership documents? I offered to show him the property deed, utility bills, security codes, tax records, and hospital credentials. He dismissed everything as potentially fake and arrested me for refusing to leave my own property. Trent interrupted. She was belligerent and obstructive. Lieutenant Reyes held up her hand. Trent, stop talking. She turned to the officer at the booking desk. Run the property records for 1840 South Congress Avenue, now. The confirmation came back in 90 seconds. Owner, Magnolia Events LLC, registered agent Amara J. Williams, purchase 2019, current market value, $2.8 million. Business license active, 0 code violations, 0 liens. Reyes looked at Trent, her voice dropping to something cold and final. You arrested the property owner for trespassing in her own building? The complaint said. I don't care what the complaint said. Did you verify the complaint before making the arrest? Trent hesitated. She refused to comply with my order to leave. Because it was her building, Reyes said, her words sharp enough to cut. You can't trespass in property you own. That's not obstruction. That's exercising rights. She turned to Williams. Dr. Williams, I am deeply sorry. These cuffs come off now, and this arrest is being voided immediately. A female officer stepped forward and removed the cuffs. Williams rubbed her wrists, red marks already forming where the metal had pressed too tight. Reyes continued. I'm calling your attorney if you'll provide the number. I'm also requesting our internal affairs supervisor come down here immediately. This arrest should not have happened. Williams pulled out her phone, which Maya had placed in her purse before the arrest. I'll call my attorney myself. But I want Sergeant Trent's badge number, his supervisor's name, the name of every officer who responded to that call, and a copy of the dispatch recording and body camera footage from every officer present. You'll have all of it, Reyes said. IA will conduct a full investigation. Williams looked at Trent, who stood rigid, face unreadable. Your career is over. That's not a threat. That's a fact. You arrested a surgeon and business owner for decorating for her daughter's birthday. You traumatized a 9-year-old child. You did it on camera, with witnesses, and you did it because you couldn't imagine a black woman owning property in South Congress. I will make sure everyone knows what you did. Trent said nothing. Williams turned to Lieutenant Reyes. I'm leaving now. My daughter's birthday party starts in less than 2 hours, and I need to make sure she's okay after watching her mother get arrested for being black in her own building. Dr. Williams, again, I am profoundly sorry. Your apology doesn't undo what happened, but I'll accept it. Because unlike Sergeant Trent, I believe in accountability. Williams walked out of the precinct at 3:22 p.m., free but not unscathed. The video went viral within 3 hours. By 6 o'clock p.m., as Zoe's birthday party was wrapping up, delayed but determined to happen, footage of the arrest had been viewed 4.2 million times on X, shared across Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and picked up by every major news outlet in Texas. The headlines wrote themselves. Austin surgeon arrested for trespassing in building she owns. Black doctor handcuffed in front of daughter while setting up birthday party. APD officer arrests property owner after refusing to verify ownership documents. Body camera footage shows officer dismissing medical license, business cards as potentially fake. The Austin Police Department issued a statement Sunday morning. We are aware of an incident involving one of our officers and are conducting a thorough internal investigation. We take allegations of racial bias seriously and are committed to accountability and transparency. The statement did nothing to stop the avalanche. Civil rights organizations called for Trent's termination. The Austin Justice Coalition organized a protest outside police headquarters. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund offered to represent Williams pro bono. National media outlets ran segments analyzing the body camera footage frame by frame, showing Williams's calm professionalism, Zoe's terror, Maya's documentation, and Trent's escalation. Dr. Williams filed a federal civil rights lawsuit 6 days later, $14.2 million in damages for unlawful arrest, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, racial profiling, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent supervision. The complaint included sworn statements from 11 witnesses, body camera footage from 4 officers, Maya's cell phone video, and documentation of Trent's 14 prior complaints. The lawsuit detailed Trent's pattern of racial profiling with surgical precision, listing dates, complainants, and outcomes of every sustained and unsustained complaint. It included depositions from supervisors who'd signed off on his annual evaluations despite documented bias. It quoted directly from training materials Trent had received and ignored. The city settled 11 months later for $14.2 million, one of the largest civil rights settlements in Austin's history. The settlement included no admission of wrongdoing but required policy changes, mandatory verification of ownership before trespassing arrests, immediate supervisor notification for arrests of professionals with credentials, and bias training overhauls across the department. Sergeant Marcus Trent was terminated 4 weeks after the incident. The termination letter, obtained through public records requests, cited failure to exercise sound judgment, failure to verify complainant information, escalation of nonviolent encounters, and conduct unbecoming an officer. He appealed through the police union. The appeal was denied. He filed for unemployment. It was denied. He applied for positions at 3 other Texas police departments. All 3 rejected him after reviewing the body camera footage. His career in law enforcement ended the moment he decided a black woman couldn't own a building in South Congress. 6 months after the arrest, Dr. Williams testified before the Austin City Council during public comment on police reform measures. She spoke for 8 minutes. Every word landed like a scalpel. I want to be clear about what happened that day. I wasn't arrested because I broke the law. I was arrested because Sergeant Trent couldn't imagine a black woman owning a $2.8 million property in a gentrified neighborhood. That failure of imagination, that reflexive assumption of criminality, is what put handcuffs on my wrists in front of my 9-year-old daughter. I am a surgeon. I've spent 14 years putting people's bodies back together. I understand precision. I understand protocols. I understand the consequences of making assumptions instead of verifying facts. If I assumed a patient's symptoms without running tests, I'd lose my medical license. If I operated based on bias instead of evidence, I'd face malpractice lawsuits. But Sergeant Trent made assumptions, ignored evidence, and faced no consequences until the video went viral. My daughter asks me now if police are going to arrest me every time we go somewhere. She's 9 years old, and she's already learned that being black in a space where people don't expect us can be criminalized. That's the legacy of that arrest. Not just my trauma, not just the settlement. The knowledge that my daughter will carry for the rest of her life that her mother, a doctor and business owner, was treated like a criminal for hanging birthday decorations. 14 complaints, 9 involving racial profiling, 4 sustained. And Sergeant Trent was still on patrol, still making the same assumptions, still escalating instead of verifying. That's not one bad officer. That's a system that tolerates and protects bad officers until the consequences become too expensive to ignore. I settled my lawsuit. The city paid $14.2 million, but money doesn't fix what was broken that day. Policy changes don't erase my daughter's tears. Terminating one officer doesn't address the culture that enabled 14 complaints to accumulate without meaningful intervention. So I'm here to say this. Accountability can't be reactive. It has to be proactive. Officers with patterns of racial profiling complaints shouldn't remain on patrol until they arrest a surgeon on camera. They should be reassigned, retrained, or removed after the 2nd or 3rd complaint. Supervisors who approve evaluations for officers with documented bias should face consequences. Departments that ignore patterns should face federal oversight. Because if we don't fix the system that allowed Sergeant Trent to terrorize my daughter in my own building, then we're just waiting for the next Dr. Williams, the next viral video, the next multi-million-dollar settlement that changes nothing. The council chamber sat in complete silence. Do you think departments should face federal oversight after repeated civil rights settlements? Let me know what you think. 14 complaints in 9 years. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. That's a system watching someone make the same mistake repeatedly and deciding the mistake wasn't severe enough to warrant removal until it became expensive and public. Here's what the data shows. Officers with 3 or more racial profiling complaints are 6 times more likely to be involved in civil rights lawsuits. Departments that retain those officers after sustained complaints face settlement costs averaging 400% higher than departments with early intervention programs. The Austin Police Department paid $14.2 million for an arrest that should have been prevented after complaint number 3 or 5 or 8. Marcus Trent's termination letter cited failure to exercise sound judgment. But judgment isn't the issue. Training isn't the issue. The issue is that Trent looked at a black woman in an upscale building and his brain supplied a narrative that required criminality, trespassing, deception. The issue is that narrative was so powerful it overrode documentation, credentials, and a 9-year-old child crying for her mother. The issue is Trent had made that assumption 14 times before, and the department let him keep making it until it cost them $14.2 million. Dr. Amara Williams owns a building worth $2.8 million. She performs surgeries that save lives and restore mobility. She runs a business with a 6-month wait list. And none of that protected her from being arrested in her own property because a neighbor saw black people and called the police. That's the reality black professionals navigate every single day. You can have the credentials, the property deeds, the medical licenses, the business cards, and still be treated like a suspect the moment someone decides you don't belong. You can comply perfectly, provide documentation, stay calm, and still end up in handcuffs because bias is more convincing than evidence. Marcus Trent's career is over. That's consequence. The city paid $14.2 million. That's accountability. But the system that produced 14 complaints without intervention, the culture that trained Trent to see black people as suspects first and citizens second, the neighbor who saw a black woman and called 911 instead of minding their business, that hasn't changed. The real question is, what changes now? Do we wait for the next Dr. Williams, the next viral video, the next lawsuit, or do we demand that departments track patterns, remove problem officers early, and train supervisors to recognize racial profiling before it costs lives, careers, and millions of taxpayers' dollars? Because if we don't fix the system that allowed Sergeant Trent to terrorize a child in her mother's building based on nothing but bias and assumptions, then we're just counting down to the next arrest, the next settlement, the next family destroyed by someone who couldn't imagine that black people belong in the spaces they own. Zoe Williams is 10 years old now. She still asks her mother if police are going to arrest them when they go places. That's the cost of unchecked bias. That's what $14.2 million can't repair. And that's why stories like this can't stay quiet. If this story affected you, hit that subscribe button, share this video, comment below about what reforms you think would actually prevent the next Sergeant Trent from destroying the next Dr. Williams. Because silence is permission, and permission is what allowed 14 complaints to turn into 1 traumatized child and 1 destroyed career. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments.